declare the meeting open at 9:34, and in doing so acknowledge that we are hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2025 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panels Regulation 2011. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them with considering the information before them. My name's Clayton Hyam. I'm presiding member for today's meeting. And with me here I have Francesca Lafanti, the deputy presiding member, and John Syme, the third specialist member. And online we have Councillor Matthew Woodall, and in the room here Councillor Scott Green from the City of Melville. Later on, when we move to, well, I've got apologies from Councillor Lim and Councillor Barber from the City of Melville, and also from the City of South Perth, Councillor Bronwyn Orr. Minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Can I get a confirmation from panel members that they've duly considered all the documentation contained within Part B and the Part B related information by show of hands? Thank you. Yes, thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? Can I ask the councillors whether this matter went to a council meeting or council briefing? No.
No, it didn't.
No. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Are there any other disclosures of interest then? No. Thank you very much. Move on. There's no Form 1 application in this part of the meeting. Moving on to the Form 2 item, which is the amendment to 4-storey mixed-use development in Wilcox Street in Ardross, and the request for extension of time. We have a presenter in Nathan Stewart. Can I remind Nathan it's 3 minutes you have, as there's been no extension of time granted. Over to you, Nathan.
Great. Thank you, presiding member. My name is Nathan Stewart from National Planning, speaking today on behalf of the applicant for the DAP Form 2 application to amend the development at 27 Wilcox Street in Ardross and seek a 2-year extension to the substantial commencement period. There is an approval recommendation from the City with new conditions proposed. My written submission has addressed these conditions, but in short, we have no comment in respect to the City's recommended new conditions 19, 20 and 22 and Advice Note 2. But we do ask the DAP to resolve to impose or to not impose the City's recommended condition 9 and amend the City's recommended new condition 21 to remove reference to the air conditioning unit locations. In relation to condition 9, this will require the installation of extensive screening to apartment 1 balcony and the apartments 3 and 5 master bedroom windows, affecting the amenity of the occupants and preventing passive surveillance of the rear laneway. The placement of the overlooking is not directly onto adjoining properties, creates minimal privacy concerns to adjoining properties. Additionally, there was no submissions from the neighbouring properties during advertising. We ask that the balcony and windows are approved as is. In relation to condition 21, we have reviewed the undercroft floor plan and we think that we can make the storerooms compliant with the minimum required sizes. So this part of the condition is okay. However, we agree with the need to reposition the air conditioning units. The approved location of the units adjoin 2 bedrooms, whereas the proposed new location adjoins a living area. We're of the view that this new location is an improvement on the approved location. Therefore, we ask condition 21 is modified to remove the air conditioner unit reference. Lastly, in relation to the Regulation 13 response issued on Monday, I just wanted to address some of the comments in this. In terms of the changes to the planning framework, we think there has been minimal that are of consequence anyway. Since receiving the development approval, originally the zoning of the site has remained unchanged under the MRS and LPS 6. The building height allocated to the site through the structure plan has been unchanged. Biggest changes come about due to the R codes. However, these changes don't impact on land use, overall development scale or residential density. Rather, the planning framework is considered to have been updated to reflect best practice on internal amenity. Development potential and community expectations on public realm, amenity and streetscape have been unchanged. Having regard to these changes to the planning framework, we're of the view that development would still receive approval today. In terms of whether the developer has pursued the implementation of the approval, as I think it can be appreciated, there has been unprecedented construction cost escalation and skilled labour shortages between 2019 and 2022. This contributed to the termination of a marketing campaign that the developer had launched, impacting the ability to implement the approval. In addition to this, and I think it is reasonable to understand that some of these issues are still being felt today, particularly in trade shortages across WA and Perth, with construction workers being absorbed into other industries such as mining, which impacts the delivery of projects such as this. Additionally, in the lead up to the publishing of the Part C of the R codes in early 2024, just before the approval lapse, our client started a review of the approved development and whether or not there was an opportunity to improve on the design. And that's what really led to this application with the changes being proposed. The application was lodged in October of 2024, 12 months ago, as a result of this review. So we are just requesting a 2-year approval from today's date to enable the developer to continue with the detailed design phase of the project. And we think an extension of 2 years is reasonable for a project of this scale and justified in this instance. That concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks. Questions from panel members?
Yes, I do. Regarding those overlooking, if I get your elevation 3 and elevation 4 correctly, it looks to me as if you've got a screen to the upper levels. I mean, you've got a well, go backwards a bit. Your argument, it seems to me, is that any potential overlooking to number 29 is either directly over the roof or is certainly not into an outdoor living area.
Yeah.
And if I get it right, there is an extended
there's a boundary wall that extends.
On the boundary wall,
slightly.
you've got face brick up to a certain level, and above that you've got a timber screen or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there is. So that partially screens some of the overlooking, but there's still some overlooking to the neighbouring 29, but it is largely over a roof area of the neighbouring building.
Right. So that screen actually is contiguous with the lower level, and it screens an oblique at that
I believe so, yes.
angle.
Yeah, I believe so.
From the upper bedroom, master bedroom.
Yep.
And equally the same.
Oh, to the balcony, sorry. I don't think it applies to the apartments 3 and 5. I think it's only to the balcony.
Yes, but does that screen actually restrict the view of apartments 3 and 5 as well?
I don't think it impacts I don't think it provides any screening to apartments 3 and 5.
It's just you've got a line going up there which looks as if it extends.
Yeah, so because the master bedrooms are set back 2 metres from the boundary, the extent of that boundary wall extent of any sort of screening, it doesn't provide too much privacy screening to the neighbouring property.
It's just at an oblique angle.
Yeah. So the direct views out of the master bedroom window are really directed at the laneway. So you really have to go out of your way to look over into the neighbour's property.
Okay.
That's
And same for bedroom 3.
Yes. Yeah. So bedroom 3 again. So that's
even more so.
Yeah. So that's even more so because it's facing towards the window of the stairs of the internal walkway areas between the apartments.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan. Any further questions from panel members? No. Thank you, Nathan. To Kate Bainbridge.
Thank you, through the chair. We just wish to request a minor wording change. We had a community member contact us who advised us of some concerns in relation to the verge parking, which I referred back through to our technical services team to review in more detail. And we have determined that we probably can only accommodate 2 verge car parking bays, just to ensure that we have adequate space for a footpath of sufficient width. and also to address the topography. There's a bit of a slope in the verge area adjacent to the subject site. So we've suggested some updated conditions and advice notes as per my deputation. And just to address the two concerns raised in relation to the conditions, by the applicant, we've tried to word condition number 9 to be as flexible as possible, so that prior to occupation, when we do our inspection for the 15C, we can just ensure that there's no overlooking of active habitable spaces of the neighbouring properties. I think the plans, we weren't 100% certain to be able to sufficiently use Part C's consideration of existing locations under the deemed to comply pathway. So we've put this condition on just to provide us an opportunity to request any oblique screening to screen any active habitable spaces. So we've tried to provide a flexible wording so that it is oblique and we're not obstructing access to sunlight. However, if we find that through the condition clearance that there is sufficient privacy, we won't necessarily require additional screening. And then in relation to the air conditioning units, this is quite an interesting issue. We've assessed the development against the current residential design codes. And so we haven't necessarily taken into consideration improvement from the previous design due to the number of and age of the frameworks that were used in the initial assessment and the number of changes since the initial assessment. We have concerns about the proximity of the air conditioning units to active habitable spaces within the development. As required within the Residential Design Codes Part C, having sufficient separation of these units to active habitable spaces to provide internal amenity is a key update in the residential design codes. We don't actually have any information from the applicant in relation to the acoustic treatments of those particular units, and so we can't make comment as to the suitability of their location. And we cannot guarantee that they will perform sufficiently without that information being provided upfront. That information is usually provided as part of a detailed acoustic report once mechanical equipment has been selected. So our preference is to see the air conditioning units relocated to a location which minimises impact on active habitable spaces within the development. However, if the panel is of a mind to approve, we would request condition to require a detailed acoustic report to be provided prior to construction commencing, which demonstrates sufficient acoustic amenity can be achieved within those active habitable spaces.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Any questions of panel members? John?
Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you, Kate. Just regarding condition 9, you're then relying on the subclause which says or any other screening alternative. So if there was a vertical screen which did the same job as it does on the ground floor, which restricts any oblique angle, then that would be satisfactory to you. You're not looking at a full obscure glass or screening to the north.
Thank you through the chair. Absolutely do not want to have screening which restricts the access to sunlight into that space. We would be looking at alternative screening measures if required at all, which still allowed sufficient light into that space. So we've tried to use the word oblique to try and ensure that any overlooking is very much indirect in nature. It may be a slight extension of a screen outwards. It might be some louvers. It could be very minor. That if at all, we definitely do not seek to see that space enclosed because we understand the need for really good light and ventilation into that space as a result of having it open in nature.
Okay, and regarding 21, that condition B is pretty cut and dried, but you're really looking at the acoustic performance there. Do we need to add some sort of leavening to that, which allows some flexibility on that and provides acoustic treatment or some reference to an acoustic report.
Through the
would that
chair,
say-
absolutely. A sentence afterwards, or units performing to satisfactory standard to ensure appropriate acoustic amenity is achieved to satisfaction of the city. Something along those lines would provide that an appropriate flexibility.
Okay, so something like unless unless confirmed by an acoustic report or something like that. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate. Further questions from panel members? Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Just in relation to the concerns around the verge parking and the footpath sort of alignment and topography issues, I gather that the city's now sort of given greater consideration to that. Will the width of the footpath and sort of the I guess gradient changes be assessed when further when this application is or the condition around, actually it might be an advice note rather than the condition. Yeah, the advice note relating to condition 19, will that be looked at further by the city to ensure that it meets disability access requirements and Australian standards and whatnot relating to footpath gradients?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, advice note number 2 is proposed to be updated to require detailed drawings, and those detailed drawings would initially come through the planning team and then be referred through to our traffic and road safety team to do a detailed assessment against the necessary standards to ensure that we have met the necessary pedestrian path width requirements as well as addressing the gradient issues. So it would go through a more detailed assessment, and that would be required prior to the commencement of development.
Thank you. Further questions? No. Okay. Thank you, Kate. We'll move on to the item then. We have a recommendation for approval with some deleted conditions and some new conditions. Going to seek a mover and a seconder for the published one at this stage, and then we can move into any amendments. So is there a mover for that? Councillor Woodall, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Scott, thank you. Councillor Woodall, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'll keep it relatively brief. These changes are pretty minor in the scheme of things. I think I largely support the points raised by the city through the new and amended conditions. I think they're addressing relevant matters relating to overlooking the air conditioning and also the verge parking and the pedestrian footpath. And I understand that there may be further wording added around the air conditioning, which I'm also supportive of. So yeah, I'm supportive overall of the proposed changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green, a seconder.
Yeah, I would just add that I think this addresses changes that we've seen to the R codes and things over the journey of this development application, and I think that's an important consideration. Yeah, I think that's adequately addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Further speakers? Yes, Member Lafanti.
I support this proposal. I think the changes are consistent with the planning framework and they retain the street interface. In terms of the overall design, the changes to the residential component of it are still consistent with the framework, and I'm supportive of those. However, I would at this juncture like to move an amendment.
Okay.
My amendment 1 relates to condition 9. And from my perspective, I wish to move the deletion of condition 9, and I can speak to that if I get a seconder.
Yes, sure. Okay, I'll seek a seconder for the deletion of condition 9. I'm happy to support that.
Thank you. From my perspective, having my reasoning for wanting to delete this is that we're specifically referring to, this condition specifically refers to the master bedroom balconies from 1, 3 and 5. The site has orientation to the rear right of way, as well as has a very narrowing of the site towards the rear. Whilst I note the concerns and comments made by city officers, from my perspective, the design really is orientated towards that rear right of way with very minimal impact on the neighbouring properties. And from my perspective, I don't believe this condition is necessary in terms of protecting amenity, given what it adjoins and what it's orientated to.
Thank you. As seconded, look, I support the removal of this condition. I mean, as the officer has said that, well, we can look at this, and if there's no need for any change, then there's no need for any change. But I don't read the condition that way. I don't think the condition is sufficiently flexible to say, well, if we, after looking at the issue, if there's no issue, then we'll ignore the condition. So my concern is that the condition is not sufficiently flexible, but also I agree with the movers' comments. If there is any overlooking, it is so oblique and so minimal as to not warrant any changes to the plan. So I'm more than happy to support that deletion. Are there further speakers on this one? Yes, Councillor.
Yes, look, I agree. I had a very good look at this issue and had a very close look at the plans. I'm quite satisfied that any possibility of overlooking is minimal, and if there is any, it is quite oblique, and it doesn't really impact on the privacy of number 29 at all, I don't think. So after having a very close look at the plans, I think I agree with Mr. Hyam that we've got a satisfactory outcome here with the plans as they are.
And further speakers? Councillor Woodall.
Thank you. Look, just briefly, I don't support the deletion of this condition. I think this development, has raised some concerns from the neighbouring properties around overlooking and the bulk and scale of the development. I understand that there isn't, direct overlooking, or it appears there isn't, but I think having this condition as a kind of fallback allows the city to just check that there isn't anything of concern. And I think the reference in the condition to clause 3.10 visual privacy of the R codes does allow flexibility for the city to say that if upon construction and looking at the development there isn't actually concerns around overlooking, then effectively that clause can be read so as to say that no further measures are required. So I would prefer to see the clause retained. Thank you.
Further speakers on this amendment? No.
Nothing further to add.
Back to the mover.
I agree with Councillor Woodall.
Okay, back to the mover, Member Lafanti.
I have no further comments.
No further comment. Okay, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. 3-2. Thank you. Floor still with you, Member Lafanti.
Thank you. From my perspective, this proposal is already indicated as appropriate for its locational context. As I already said, it retains the street interface. From my perspective, I also agree that an extension of time is warranted in this particular development, and that the information we've had provided, as well as some of the challenges that are happening out in the public domain in development space, is relevant to this site. From my perspective, the overall development will enhance and interact with the street, and the changes to the first floor into incorporation of the unit development will also add activation to the street. A very large office area has some questions in relation to the interaction from the street, and some challenges regarding demand on offices. So I'm convinced that the residential component on the upper level will also enhance the street interaction, as I might propose.
Thank you. further speakers? Member Simon.
Yeah, look, I agree with that. This is, we had a look at this when it was deferred. I think it was approvable then. I think it's approvable now. I accept the reasons for an extension. They are common ones at the moment. So I think there's no problem with having it as a Form 2. I think the changes to the planning framework don't really impact this, and it's been tested against this by this process anyway. I will propose an amendment to condition 21B with the addition of the words after that point 2 that, and I'm happy to be pleased to be edited, but unless noise amenity to internal spaces is illustrated to be at satisfactory levels by a qualified acoustic report.
Can you read that again, please, John?
Unless noise amenity to internal spaces is illustrated to be at satisfactory levels by a qualified acoustic report.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that proposed amendment? Second that. Thank you. John, do you want to speak?
Yes, look, my problem with this is that condition B as it is quite cut and dried. There is no flexibility in there. I think that some flexibility needs to be put into this. If the proponent can illustrate that there is no problem with whatever position they choose to put the conditions are, then the intent of B needs to be maintained. But I think if noise amenity internally is the issue, then if that can be illustrated to be addressed, then we should allow that.
Thank you. Seconder, I agree with that. I think we need to rely on some expertise there, because even locating them 1 metre from an external wall, the habitable room, may still cause problems. So I think having a specialised acoustic report dealing with this issue is the best way to go. Further speakers on the matter? Yes.
I agree with those changes. I would also agree that the location of the air conditioning on this side, having a barrier to the adjoining property, is beneficial. And I would concur that once the acoustic report is provided, be clear in terms of what treatments, if any additional or locational changes that are required associated with the air conditioning, both in terms of what they're choosing to put on there, which we don't necessarily have the final detail on, and the final location of it. So I think it's a good modification to this condition, which enables the air conditioning to be considered on that side whilst meeting the noise considerations.
Thank you. Any further speakers on the amendment? No? Okay, thank you. Back to Member Simon, if he wishes to close the debate. Nothing further. Okay, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. I'm still with you, Member Simon.
No, thank you. I think this is actually an interesting and actually quite a tricky site to get this level of accommodation, and I think it's actually turning out to be quite a good development.
Okay, thank you. I support the proposal. I would like to add a further amendment, which is to include the recommended additional amended condition development, which is 19, and the recommended updated advice note from the officers, which is to do with the verge parking. So I don't believe that was part of the original recommended movement from Councillor Woodall. So I'm going to move that change, which I think is just fairly self-explanatory. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Member Lafanti. Are there any speakers on that? No. Okay, I'll put that amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Look, in supporting this, I agree with the comments that have been made. There are a number of discretions that were required. And I support the officer's comments in relation to those discretionary measures. And I note also that the applicant has said that they can tweak the storage space for the apartments. So that's a good outcome as well. I don't think there's anything further I need to say at this stage. I'll move back to the original mover, which is Councillor Woodall, to close debate.
Thank you. No further comments. Happy to go to the vote.
Thank you. I'll now put it to vote as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. So thank you very much. Thank you to Councillor Woodall and Councillor Green and the local government members there. Kate, thank you for your attendance and participation. So see you next time.
Thank you.
All right, we'll recommence the meeting. I'll just go back to the declaration of due consideration for Part C. Members declaring they are familiar with all the material before us. Raise your hands. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. No. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the item, which is the multiple dwellings in Leigh Street in Como. We have a presenter here in Andrew Cumming from Holmes Charlie. 3 minutes, Andrew. So following that, we'll ask some questions. Over to you.
Thank you, DAP members. We also thank the City of South Perth planning officers for their collaboration prior to and during the assessment process. We also thank them for a well-written responsible authority report. By way of background, a larger development was previously approved over the subject site in 2022 by the Development Assessment Panel. This included a total height of 8 stories when measured from natural ground level across the subject site. This proposal is for a total of 6. The purpose of the new development application is to reflect detailed design that is currently ongoing with the aim to commence on site by February 2026. Prior to receipt of the current RAR, we had been in discussion with the city to alter a range of recommended planning conditions. The 2 outstanding planning conditions are conditions 8 and 20 in relation to sustainability and bin stores respectively. We would ask the DAP to alter the conditions as outlined in the deputation request form we submitted to the DAP, particularly the elements in red. In terms of justification for each alteration, we note the following. Condition 8 in terms of sustainability. The condition applied to our original 2022 approval referred to the sustainability report submitted with the application, which required the equivalence of a 5-star Green Star rating to be achieved, and all identified recommendations from the report to be implemented in full. Given the Canning Bridge Activity Centre plan has not changed since 2022, and this is the planning instrument that sets out the applicable standards then and now as per the conditions, we have the view that the intent of this condition can again be enabled. Finally, we understand the city has some reservations about the language used in the current sustainability report. For example, our target at this point in time is to meet the rating required based on certain outcomes, which we will explore and confirm at conditions clearance stage. The language used reflects the design process and what we know now, or really what we knew when we were writing the report, which is quite a while ago. When seeking to clear condition 8, the report will use certain language reflecting a more complete understanding or a complete understanding of what is achievable. Now, in terms of condition 20, we understand local planning policy 3.1 in relation to waste management is subject to review, and the standards under condition 20 relate to not only what the city wishes to see for this development, but potentially what standards may be forthcoming at the completion of that review. That said, the proper construction of a condition needs to reference a current planning instrument or document that the requirements listed in a condition relate to. Without this, there's no reference point for the applicant, nor any future reader of the condition. Further, to require an applicant to address standards that do not relate to a public-facing policy or guideline is not considered fair or reasonable. Therefore, we believe the requested minor change is appropriate and has the benefit of potentially enabling the city's listed standards to be applied as an advice note or advice notes. Overall, we believe the alterations to the conditions are fair and reasonable and should be endorsed by the DAP. Thank you for your time, and we're here along with my colleagues to answer any questions the DAP may have.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, who do you have with you here?
So we have Niall Brown, Senior Associate, and Hazam also from Hampshire.
Thank you. All right, panel members, questions? Yes, Member Simon.
Yes, thank you. Can we just unpick condition 8? I noticed that the Stantec report talks about 5-star equivalence rating, which is fair enough. What do you understand is the issue on the draft?
I think it's just more, it doesn't directly reference that outcome. It's simply just a Green Star rating of 5 stars.
I mean, Stantec also talk about an average rating as well. Are you wanting to choose one or the other? Or?
No, and I do know, and we were having discussions about this earlier, about in the past, equivalence might have referenced the fact that you couldn't apply Green Star to your development for a range of different reasons. The report talks about both matters, particularly on energy, obviously, and the art codes require that too. So there's no issues there from my understanding. We're simply just wanting the condition to reference our current report and that be worked on over time when we go to clear condition 8. And the same with, I think there's condition 9 as well, which requires confirmation of what's built at occupation or prior to. So it just seems quite standard for that to apply, rather than, I suppose, the key issue is it's just a little vague exactly what, if anything, is at issue if we can't, we just rely on the current report, other than, as I say, potentially the language used in that current report, which I would say is just reflecting of what was known at the time and allowing flexibility.
And condition 20 as it's currently read is quite clear and specific.
Yeah, and that's fine. Really, the issue is the second. Yeah. So there's 2 bin areas, and this was subject to the assessment process. The city wanted us to have a second bin area, and I won't call it a bin store because it's not a bin store as designed. We had to lose a couple of spaces for that second bin area, but to then require us to have the full list will require more space, will then lose more bays or other aspects to the development. So there is an issue there. So for the sake of not having to get bogged down in the detail in a DAP meeting, my thoughts as a planner was just reference the current policy and we'll work on it over time rather than have to go through each line, which we didn't design to originally because it's not a design standard we could actually apply. So again, I was just getting back to first principles of let's just apply a policy. It's current, that's what we're designed to. Through the assessment process, we've had to add another bin area, not a bin store, and we're constrained with space for that bin area. So we could probably have tap, but to have space for wash down and all the remaining elements will be difficult. And we say, given it's built to rent, therefore there's an on-site manager, that manager can get the bins from that second bin area, bring them to the bin store where everything else is as per the standard, do the wash downs, whatever you need to do, plonk them back. Really, that bin area, the second one on the plans, is just for convenience for people that live above the second element. Therefore, they don't have to walk quite so far, which I think was the issue raised originally by the city. So we think we've actually got to a good outcome. It's just to apply every single standard might be quite tricky in that second bin area. And we don't want to lose more bays because I think we're on the limit.
Okay. Questions? Yes,
My question relates to waste management. And I note in the plans, particularly the vehicle access, it seems to be extremely tight to reverse a waste vehicle into and turn. In fact, it's pretty much on both boundary and building as it's turning. There doesn't appear to be any room for or margin of error, I suppose. Can you speak to that particular aspect? I suppose I'm flagging some concerns that there'll need to be some level of modification to adequately turn the vehicle based on the material I have here. Can you speak to that particular aspect?
So initially, and I might hand over. Just before you answer though, it did come up during assessment, so it's not a new concern, and thank you, that member. But we have addressed it as far as we understand, both from a technical viewpoint in terms of our technical consultants advising us, but also architecturally, and that's what I hand over.
Yeah, I think part of the design development stage now is we've identified with the traffic consultant as well, those radiuses that you're talking about. So the design as it stands allows that sufficient turning circle plus an additional 300, I think.
So the traffic is on page 137. If you're looking at electronic page 137, it's the figure 11 swept path of a 9.7 truck.
In the report itself?
Yes, in the light report. Just seems very tight on my look at the plans.
So as part of where the design stands now, specifically as well to the substation and the requirements, that substation wall is actually further back now, and some of the structure adjacent to it, which is the column on the other side as well, is also pulled back. So there's now sufficient clearances. The diagram that you've got, as you say, is just enough, but where we are now is actually more generous, and there's more offsets and allowances for that.
Thank you. That was my only
Okay, thank you.
query at this stage.
Andrews, do you want to take you back to condition 8 and 9? You say you'd like 8 to be amended, but 9's okay.
Yeah, 9's okay, because that'll be the end outcome, which the only bit in question is the fact that we don't know what we don't know, if that makes sense to you.
9 says at the end of it all, you have to confirm you're satisfied a 5-star Green Star rating.
So it gets back to the equivalence aspect.
Yeah.
I think we're all a little unsure about exactly the requirement from the city through the structure plan. I think that's fair to say. The equivalence process, at least in my experience, has always been you either couldn't use the GBCA standards or you want to effectively propose a different outcome to, say, the point system in the GBA standards. But also, and probably more importantly, equivalence normally meant that you're not going through GBCA registration and certification, which I don't believe this condition requires, and I have actually posed the question to the city. So I suppose that all said, for consistency's purposes, equivalence should be in condition 9 as well.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, that was
Sorry,
where
I just needed to work through into my head as well.
Thank you. No further questions? No, thanks, gentlemen. We'll move to the officers. Before I move to the officer, while they're getting there, I'll just note that we did have a written deputation from Ken Perry on this matter. Anna and Scott there. Anna, did you want to make any comments up front, or are you happy just to take questions?
We're happy to take questions, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, members, are there questions?
I suppose my only question goes to the comment we just heard in terms of the city's assessment. Refers in our documentation that there'll be a private provider for the FOGO because the city doesn't provide it, and the city is providing waste for the other streams. And I suppose my question is basically the same: is the city satisfied that your vehicles, and you obviously have standard vehicles, can appropriately manoeuvre in what appears to be a very tight space? And I note the applicant's comments today about some of those modifications to enhance the turning circle.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, that was the subject of considerable discussion with the applicant through the process. And I would agree with the applicant that the modified plans now do satisfy the city that the vehicle can actually enter and leave the site in the forward gear, which is what the city requires if providing that service.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Yes, same questions on 8 and 9 and 20. Would you have any trouble if the words equivalence are applied after 5-star, 5 Green Star, which is the exact wording which is in the standard?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, so in relation to, if I may probably expand on the Green Star and where this comes from in terms of the planning framework. So there's a requirement under element 11 of the Canning Activity Centre plan that at a minimum, and the wording is at a minimum, that a 5-star Green Star outcome is achieved for comprehensive new development. Building on the applicant's previous comments relating to the previous approval where equivalency was in place, there was a environmentally sustainable design local planning policy which provided a pathway for an equivalency to be achieved. That policy has been revoked by the city and is no longer applicable, so we're left with just the Canning Activity Centre plan providing that requirement for the 5-star Green Star framework. As part of the city's design review and dealing with our sustainability panel members, the sustainability panel members have effectively stated that the rigour of the 5-star and the Green Star assessment comes from effectively a certified process or a qualified peer review member of the Green Star Council, providing that certainty that the points have been achieved and they have been achieved to the standard that equates to the Green Star rating. So building from there, the city would have concerns if the wording of equivalency was installed, if the equivalency was provided not by a Green Star accredited professional, noting that the applicant's sustainability report does state that key to the design is the appointment of a Green Star accredited professional. So we would be looking for a certification or a design statement from that accredited professional from the Green Star Council that 5-star has been achieved for the development prior to occupation, and also as the final sustainability report submitted prior to building permit stage.
So is that the issue? The issue is certification?
Effectively the issue is the certification, yes, or a statement from an accredited
individual. So if you put equivalence in there, would you say that they can tick all the boxes and say, yes, we've done it, it's up to you to clear it? Mm-hmm. Would that be the process?
Effectively, so if that came through and it wasn't done as a certified professional, the process the city would take is we would take the submitted ESD report and we would send it through to our design consultants and ESD specialists as part of the city's design review panel. The previous applications that we've had to go through, they've always basically stated that the rigour of the assessment comes from having a certified professional appointed by Green Star, giving the endorsement of the ESD initiatives put forward. An accreditation by a ESD professional who's not accredited by Green Star carries a significantly lesser weight than one that has been appointed by Green Star.
Further questions? Sorry, further questions?
Yeah, condition 20. Would you have any problem with arguing the detail with reference to your current case?
Yes, and thank you through the chair. So the city maintains its position regarding the current condition that's put forward. Of note, the condition is worded to include the requirements of the current waste management local planning policy. As we're aware, policies are subject to amendment in the future. The condition has been worded to provide certainty for now, or if this development, for example, wasn't acted upon within 4 years, there could be a change to the policy suite, which could, if the policy is amended and a different standard for a bin store has been installed at that time, there may be a almost retrospective requirement for this development to meet the requirements of the new policy. So the wording of the condition is effectively as per the existing waste management local planning policy, specifically clause 5.8 bin storage areas, which list those substantial requirements of the condition. Responding to the applicant's comments before, just in terms of looking at, in terms of how we clear that condition, if the concerns are in relation to that second bin store, I can't really see as a consequence of this condition the significant amendments to the size or layout of that bin store, with the only effective requirements are minimum door sizes and not stacking of bins, and providing a tap and ensuring a sewer connection that does not allow stormwater discharge. I believe that those requirements can be installed for both bin stores proposed as part of the development.
I gather that there's a bit of a tight space on what they call the bin area. Your condition 20 would allow no negotiation on that.
Correct, yes, through the chair. It is been worded quite stringently in terms of its requirements there, and those are the city's minimum bin store requirements.
Is that second bin store required?
So this was part of a negotiation throughout the development assessment process. The development's a little bit unique in terms of its layout. The component of the development that's located towards the west is almost an independent tower component of it. If you follow the path, for example, the top dwelling in the northwest corner, there's quite a long pathway that any resident of that building would have to travel if they were to deposit their bins in the single bin store. So as a result of that, for amenity reasons, we basically required that a second bin store was provided, and this was also on the advice of the city's environmental health team, for a second smaller bin store to effectively serve as that component of development. Whilst the bin stores might share some services for actual wash down practice, concerns, for example, like bin juice or spills from the bins in that store, there would need to be an ability to effectively wash them up and clean up that space for public health reasons. And the installation of, for example, a floor drain and a wash down tap for that is effectively sufficient in terms of clearing that condition from the cities, and that would satisfy the wording of the condition as proposed.
Okay, further questions? Just taking you back, Scott or Fiona, to conditions 8 and 9. Is there some flexibility that can be built in to those conditions to still satisfy your requirements? So it's not actually a 5-star, green star rating.
Through the chair, I mean, we would consider that the wording to the satisfaction of the City of South Perth actually does still include flexibility within those conditions. It is quite explicit in the requirements of the city, but ultimately that wording, I would suggest, allows for flexibility without expressly stating.
Okay. All right. John, you sound like you have a question.
No. I'm just wondering, given this is an issue, is it reasonable on condition 20 for a similar, unless otherwise approved by the city, clause to be in there?
Yeah, through the chair, the city would have no objection to that.
Okay.
Okay, all right, no further questions. Thank you, Fiona. Thanks, Scott. item. Recommendation for approval. Is there a mover? For this? Thank you. Seconder? Simon, thank you.
Thank you. I'm satisfied that the proposal is generally compliant with the prudence of the planning framework, including LPS 7 and the associated Canning and Bridge Activity Centre plan provisions. The proposed building height is appropriate in terms of both its height and its locational context, being designed to include various materials and articulation that's supported by the design review panel. I note that they did support the overall plan and proposal. There were a couple of improvements suggested, particularly in relation to materials and finishes, but I'm satisfied that the proposal as is provided is appropriate in the context of the development. The variations in relation to reduction of separation distance are also appropriate, given that there's issues particularly that were being impacted for consideration were amenity and privacy, and these have been addressed in the design through the placement of windows and balconies to mitigate that particular issue. It's also included in screening and landscaping. So overall, the design responds, in my view, well to its locational context. I'm also satisfied that the range and mix of dwelling type is appropriate and is consistent with the objectives for housing, and particularly residential housing in this particular precinct, and that that the scale and height of the development is also consistent with what the precinct talks about as a medium to high level development form. The removal of the existing trees that the report refers to, I note there's been a substantial evaluation undertaken in relation to it, and it's referred to the rationale in terms of why those trees need to be removed in relation to that particular site, noting that there is tree replacement part of the landscape plan, as well as on building landscaping, quite substantial on building landscaping, and that is to counter the deep soil provisions. From my perspective, parking and manoeuvrability are also appropriate in relation to the development, and I'm satisfied that servicing, as I've raised in today's meeting, has been addressed appropriately. At this juncture, I would, however, like to move an amendment, if I may. My amendment is for condition 20. I am retaining condition 20 and adding at the end of the condition, unless otherwise approved to the satisfaction of the City of South Perth. So that gives the flexibility. If I have a second.
Yes, I'll seek a second for that. Member Simon, thank you.
My reasoning to modify it by just in those additional words is that I think that the provision of that condition with those specifications does provide certainty and clarity, and that is an issue that was raised both by the city as well as by the applicant, as well as in this particular case, I acknowledge that some minor modification can occur through the refinement of the design as it moves forward, and therefore this condition provides the opportunity for the applicant and the City of South Perth to come together to have those discussions. So that is my rationale and reasoning.
Thank you. Member Simon, seconded to that.
Yes, look, I agree, and that was a tenor of my questions. I think this is such a complex development that a level of negotiation or compromise, if you like, of what is in fact could be relatively minor issues is required. So I think rather than having a cut and dried condition in there, I think the ability to have some sort of negotiation in there is important.
Thank you. I sort of support the amendment, so I suppose there's a need to wind up the debate on that. No, I'll put that amendment. All in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Floor is still with you.
I've made all my comments. I don't have any further that I need to comment on. So I'm satisfied that the development scale, height and form, as well as land use, is appropriate in this context.
Okay, thank you. Member Simon.
Yes, thank you. Look, this is actually quite an impressive development, taking 15 dwellings and turning them into 107 without going into high rise. I think the fact that it's got all of this into 6 levels, I think is impressive and quite appropriate to the site and to the area. The mix of dwellings and so on is a good one. I think the way that they've been designed and formatted is also very nicely done. I think the discretions that we're being asked to take in terms of building separation and so on are really quite minimal and have been well handled. I agree that being able to catch a bit of, albeit rather limited amount of actual deep soil area is an advantage, and I think the landscaping plan, there was probably more detail on the landscaping plan than the development plans that we got, which indicates the level of attention which is being paid to that. And I think for a development such as this, which is a very complex development, the landscaping will be a critical element of it, and getting that right will actually go a long way to taking it from quite a good development into a very good one. I take the argument on condition 9, and I am mindful that the Stantec report talks in terms of 5-star, 5 screen star equivalence rating, but if my understanding is the difference is between having an independent certification of that, if that comes with it, I think for a development of this scale, it's probably justified. So if that's my understanding of what the difference in wording entails, I think that condition 9 and 10 would stand. I'm willing to have a discussion about that if any other members want to look at it.
Conditions 8 and 9.
8 and 9, I'm sorry. Yes. Apart from that, it's, overall, this is an outstanding development, I think.
Yes, look, I'm more than happy to support this. I think it's an improvement on the previous iteration that we saw quite some time ago now. I also acknowledge the variations or the areas of discretion that are being sought, and accept the officers' reasoning in their report. I note the shortfall in deep soil areas as others have, but this is being offset by additional large area of on-structure planting. Also note that the arguments put forward to remove the trees on site, and it's probably unfortunate that's happening, but it's the situation as it is. Any other areas of discretion, potential amenity impact have really been covered by the appropriate conditions, so I'm more than happy to support this proposal. Back to the mover, Member Lafanti, closed debate.
No other comments.
Okay, I'll put the motion to approve as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So just moving on, there's no form for applications, no SAT matters in this part of the report. In terms of other business, there are a number of SAT matters listed, and I'll close the meeting at 10:38. Okay, thank you everyone for your attendance. Thank you to the board staff here and all those present.